I don't know about y'all, but Steam reviews tend to be my #1 best place to get information regarding a new game. I mean, there are so many great and honest reviews on there. Like, check this one out. Just absolutely tremendous. So I decided to torture myself by going through every negative review in English for Persona 3 Reload on Steam to get more insight on what Atlas might have fumbled on. I know I'm being sarcastic, but no game is perfect, and hearing more differing opinions from people can be valuable. I don't want to waste any time, so let's go ahead and get into some of these reviews. Now, the vast majority of the negative reviews are commenting on the terrible business practices of the game. I'm being serious. 60 to 70% of every negative review roughly was due to the pricing of the expansion pass, and honestly, I can't say I disagree. The expansion pass roadmap is absolutely terrible, and while episode Aegis will most likely be a great remake of that chapter of the story, this roadmap and pricing structure really did kill a lot of the hype around it. The funniest thing about the expansion pass roadmap is just honestly how worthless it is. Let's be honest with ourselves. Are we gonna come back and play this game just for the Velvet Room attendant outfits? Maybe if that wave of DLC was for like a fuck ton of outfits on the level that Persona 5 offered, it would be a different story, but just the Velvet Room outfits is a dud to say the least. The first wave is kind of a dud too, because I don't know about y'all, but when it comes to music DLC, I literally never use them. That's just me though. The only thing valuable about the pass is the episode Aegis part, and I think it would have been a bit more well received had it just been standalone and a bit cheaper, to be honest. So yeah, in my opinion, I think these are all valid negative reviews. If you disagree with the business practices of a company or game, I think people should make that very clear and push back against it. Now, what I don't understand is people review bombing the pass itself, because if you leave a review on it, that means you bought it. So you're supporting the practices you don't like. Don't do that. I don't want to focus too much on the business practices for this video, even though it is important. So let's get into some of the actual critiques for the game itself. To preface this, I'm someone who personally believes Reload improved on Fest and Portable in most ways, so hearing opinions from people who don't feel that way is something I'm looking forward to. This review here says the game doesn't give you an option to roll a fat blunt. That is very true, I never thought about that. Maybe Atlas should take some notes. The first actual serious review focuses on a bunch of various points, so let's break it down. The reviewer says that Reload didn't meet their expectations in quality they desired for a remake because moments like the Orpheus Awakening scene using in-game rendered cutscenes were worse than before, when they opted to use animated cutscenes instead. To be honest, this is subjective, so you can't say either side is right or wrong, but I do think the rendered cutscenes do look amazing in Reload. The Orpheus Awakening scene in Reload when compared to Fest, or God forbid Portable, still gives that same kind of oh shit, what's going on feel that makes you feel anxious and excited to see what happens. The main complaint I have for this scene isn't really a big deal, but I will say the blood on the ground and walls in Fest was a pretty great touch and added to the moment. But I don't think the absence of that is enough for me to say it's bad or soulless or whatever. Something I think Reload did do better on the other hand was the voice acting in this scene. Alex Lee is an absolutely brilliant voice actor, and his scream as Thanatos tears Orpheus apart gives me goosebumps most times I watch it. Speaking of that, another complaint I saw people saying about this scene was how Orpheus explodes. People said that in Reload it looks like a balloon deflating, whereas in Fest it was a lot more gruesome. To be honest, I kind of agree actually, but again, it wasn't something big enough for me to call the moment bad. I still really liked it. The second main part of this review touches on the fact that Reload doesn't contain all of the previous content from Fest and Portable, such as the Vision Quest doors, the answer, and the female protagonist. This is another complaint I saw a lot of people talking about throughout this video, and to be honest, I fully agree. When I made my own Persona 3 Reload review, despite giving the game a nearly perfect score, the thing that held me back from giving it a full 10 was the fact that the female protagonist was not present. A few people got kinda aggravated with me in the comments for this, and that's okay, but I do think a remake should strive to be the completed and definitive edition of a title, and Reload objectively isn't that. Even if you don't care for the Vision Quest doors or any of the content lacking, that's besides the point. Persona 3 content from other iterations is not in Reload, and that's grounds to be a little bit disappointed if you ask me. And I would like to make it clear that I am aware of what goes into game development. I'm not stupid, even though it can seem like it sometimes. Making FemC would have taken a lot of resources, and I'm sure Atlas would have done it had they been given the time. but they weren't. With this said, does that mean we can't be disappointed at least a little bit? I don't think that information really changes the fact that I would have liked to have seen her and everything else in return. So I'll say it again. I totally agree with this point, and I think it's 100% valid to point out the fact that this game is missing content from previous iterations. Those are the two main points I'd like to focus on from this review in particular. Since the other stuff they mentioned I'll talk about in due time or in another video, but feel free to pause and read the whole thing. Overall though, I think this review is very valid. It was structured well, and they weren't being elitist or weird about the way they approached it, and it feels like it came from a place of genuine care and fairness. So props to this person, don't let those clown awards deter you. Another thing I saw be pretty common in many of the reviews were the comparisons between Persona 3 Reload and Persona 5, which I think is actually extremely interesting to hear since Persona 5 does do things a lot differently in terms of dungeons and confidants. And since it is still technically the newest release in the Persona family, it's cool to see how newer fans of the games feel about Persona 3, or just people who prefer Persona 5 for whatever reason. The main thing I saw being said in the comparisons was that the palaces of Persona 5 were much better than the randomly generated dungeons of Tartarus, which is interesting because Persona 5 does have mementos, which you need to fully complete to finish the game, so it makes me wonder how they felt about that aspect of the game. With that said though, I'd say this is a fair take for those who feel that way. I think the palaces of Persona 5 keep things a bit more fresh and interesting than Tartarus even in Reload, and this isn't to say Tartarus is bad. Another thing I saw mentioned was the fact that Tartarus is lacking depth in themes in comparison to the dungeons of Persona 4 and palaces of Persona 5. This part I cannot agree with. Considering the fact that death is the main theme of Persona 3 and the fact that death is something that torments all of Cease throughout the game, Tartarus is pretty fitting considering it's a deep dungeon of the underworld that represents torment and death. Also, considering the end of the game with the fall and the fact that Tartarus is for judgment, I honestly don't think Tartarus could be much better of a dungeon thematically for Persona 3 regardless of how you feel about the gameplay and dungeon itself. I'm gonna say this take is invalid to be honest because if nothing else the theme of Tartarus is great. The last main thing I think is worth talking about for this comparison is how Reload taking aspects of Persona 5 was to the game's detriment. This review here says that the Persona 5ification of Persona 3 doesn't mesh well with the story or characters, and doesn't bring the advancements of Persona 3 either. And to be honest, I really have no idea what this even means. They did bring advancements from Persona 5, like the Showtime attacks and the Theurgy attacks. Now, if they're referring to the UI, because I have been seeing that argument tossed around on other platforms like Twitter, then I actually could not disagree more. I think the UI of Reload, especially the status screens, are so much better, it's not even close. I think it showcases the theme of the game better while just being way better to look at visually. With that said, this is such a subjective thing that it doesn't really matter, so I won't focus on it too much. But all I'm gonna say is that this is just something I cannot agree with at all, and I'm still not 100% sure what they mean by advancements from Persona 5 not being in Persona 3 Reload. On to the next topic is the discussion of the art direction of this remake. And good fucking lord, this discussion is a doozy because neither side is wrong, but both sides have extreme opinions, it seems. Some say Reload is better in every way, and some think Fest is better in every way. And if you've been on Twitter, it's been a damn war zone, which is funny as someone who just stays in their own lane on that shit ass website. But I'm getting way off track. Let me stay on Steam reviews because that's a topic for another day. But you should follow me on Twitter. A lot of the Steam reviews did actually praise the visuals heavily, but some argued that the atmosphere was destroyed from that of the original title. This reviewer claims that the original had more tension, gloominess, and off-puttingness to the atmosphere, and thankfully this person actually gave us an example, so thank you for actually being so gracious enough to do that. They say the original scene of Yukari putting the gun to her head was better for the sound design and lack of dialogue. I'm gonna actually let the two of these play out so you yourself can make a judgment alongside me. Check them out.
Just put it to my head. And then pull the trigger. Come on. There's no way I can't!
So which was better? Or actually, a better question would be, is one significantly better than the other? In my opinion, I'd say they both do things well in their own way. As the reviewer mentioned, it does make the scene a lot more tense, but I also think Reload fits Yukari as a character more. Since Yukari fears death and is trying to overcome that to use her power, doesn't it make sense for her to try and pep herself up to do so? I don't think this really ruins the atmosphere either, because you have zero context as to what she's actually trying to do in this moment on your first playthrough. As people who have played Fest or Portable before Reload, we would know this, but I'd like to think new players to the narrative would see this and mostly think, holy shit, is this girl trying to kill herself? So, like I said, I think the example they gave is solid, but I do gotta disagree that it just kills the atmosphere at large. With that said, I do think this is a valid opinion. They have an actual example of something they preferred more, and really that's all I want to ask out of a Steam review. They also mentioned the topic of music, and this is by far the most absolutely subjective thing humanly possible, so I'm not going to debate this too much. They claim the remixed songs aren't bad, but don't fit the game, and says they could have been cut songs from Persona 5. Me personally, I disagree with both of these 100%, but again, it's subjective, so I don't want to go crazy on it. So all I'll say is that the music is a pretty hot topic for debate when it comes to Reload. So I would like to hear what you all personally thought about the soundtrack of Reload in the comments. There are a few more things I would like to go over for this video. This here is a review from someone who is not a Persona fan. How do I know they aren't, you might ask? Well, because they literally made it the point of the review. I'm not saying that maliciously. And I think opinions from folk like these are really valuable so we can see what doesn't click for people who don't like the games as much as someone as me, or probably you if you've watched this far into the video. And hey, if you're still here and haven't subscribed, consider doing so. It helps my channel a lot. This reviewer got into Reload via recommendations from his friends, and he claims the characters are too tropey and that they are predictable, and the fact they're high schoolers makes the impact of the game less hitful. Hitful? Impactful is what I meant to say. This then transitions into the complaint that there are too many walls of text and the social link options are weak. They then go on to mention their gripes with Tartarus and how it doesn't change much and how there aren't any places to fight outside of it. The main praise they gave is the Persona designs, art, and music, so they didn't hate everything. Now, I would like to point out that on this review, the reviewer has a grand total of 1.8 hours played, which explains why they didn't know about the full moon operations and how there are battles outside of Tartarus. But it is true that the majority of your time in combat and gameplay is spent inside that dungeon, so if you don't enjoy it, then it might not be for you. With that said, Tartarus does change quite a lot from block to block, but of course they wouldn't know that since they played less than 2 hours. On the topic of the Personas, combat, and all that, they mentioned that they wish for more emphasis on the combat in Personas, which honestly makes me wonder if they would enjoy the older Persona games because from what I'm hearing it fixes the issues they have. It focuses more on the story in Personas, there are no social links, it has great music, and overall it just sounds like it's more up their alley. If you share a similar thought to this person, then I'd recommend giving the old games a shot. They have random encounters and whatnot, but they can still be enjoyed. Even though I disagree with most of this post as well, especially considering they played less than 2 hours, I'll still say it's valid since they were fair enough and didn't try to come off as rude or elitist. Now, I'm gonna just go ahead and give a fair warning. This next review, I was not the most fair with, I'll admit. This review blew my mind, and I was shocked reading it because they genuinely did not have one single positive thing to say throughout the entire thing. And this thing is long, look at this. They said the story was worse, the art is worse, music is worse, voice acting was worse, tone is worse, UI is worse, cutscenes were worse, the writing in general was worse, the gameplay was worse, the very first moment you gain control of the game is worse, the ending is worse. I'm not exaggerating. Feel free to read this if you'd like. They think this game is worse in every single way. Now, what's ironic is that they say the art is worse and Reload sucks, but then their profile picture is the Elizabeth Reload bust up, so what's up with that, pimp? Also, I'm gonna just give a quick spoiler warning because low-key, this last point they made spoils the ending hard and I'm gonna skip to it, so I'm gonna just give you a second to put this timestamp for you to skip to on screen. Okay, so they said, and I quote, Adding a shot to the ending of Cease, reaching the roof, and reacting to Aigus and Makoto's presence is so thoughtless and horrible. What were they thinking, man? End quote. Now, I'm gonna be totally honest here with y'all. This had my fucking jaw on the floor because I couldn't believe what I was reading. In what reality is this possibly thoughtless and horrible, and in what sense? Are Cease thoughtless and horrible? Are the developers of the game thoughtless and horrible? What I don't understand about this point is what the fuck do they think happened at the end of Fest anyway? You can literally oh god, it got me dying here. This review is so dumb. Anyway, you can literally hear everyone coming up to the roof to see you and fulfill the promise. And what, now that the remake added a scene of them actually making it up there, it's bad now? Regardless of whether you see this shit or not, it still happens, so how does it make it thoughtless and horrible? This shit literally makes no sense to me, and I'm gonna just keep it a buck with y'all, and I don't got no fucking bugs. I'm a college student. Like, this is genuinely one of the most petty and absurd critiques I think I've ever heard of this game in my entire life. And to be honest, I don't even want to waste my time on this review because of it. Say whatever you want, but this review is motherfucking valid, and I stand on that, and I'm going full hater mode on some Kung Fu Kenny type shit on this one. Fuck this review, man. All right. Admittedly, that's going a little bit too far, but I don't know, man. Like, this review is just not bad. Like, they did give their points and everything, but I don't know. I think, like, how do you play this game and not see at least one thing? Like, even the most negative reviews I've ever seen of this game have had at least one positive thing about it. So I don't know. And before I start writing my own version of Meet the Grams, I'm gonna just end the video here. We actually did see some pretty good reviews, but I had to dig through a sea of ones that were either trolling or making non-points to find them. I think constructive criticism is important, and it helps to figure out what companies can do to improve on their next title. And most of these were pretty solid. They gave good examples, and most of them weren't trying to be in bad faith. That's really all I gotta say though. What did you think about some of these reviews? What did y'all think about Reload as a remake? This video is good for some discussion, so I'm gonna be keeping a close eye on the comments. I'd also really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe alongside that. I love y'all, and I really appreciate the support you've given me lately. We just hit 3,000 subscribers, and that shit's amazing to me. Thank y'all. With that said though, it's been your boy Yandere Gogeta, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out, and have a great day.